All right. Moving on, we have Ben Woolsey. Ben, you get to do a second one. So let's see if you can top the first one.
I don't want to top the other one. But just a second. So this time I'm going to be talking about transportation, which is a very important issue. I don't think it gets as much attention as it should. And in New Hampshire, we might think that, oh, you know, we've got a toll on 293, and we've got like it's just roads. There's not that much mass transit, so there's not that much transportation issues to really talk about. But I'm coming from the perspective. So actually, sorry, I need to set up. I'm coming from the perspective. Oh, my apologies. Okay. Anyway. Does that work? Yeah, okay. So I'm coming from the perspective of a market urbanist, which is to say I think cities are a natural expression of the market, and that if we allow things to happen, there would be more cities, in fact, in New Hampshire than there currently are. There are some barriers to cities developing, which are in the policies, which most people are not aware of. So the standard story about, standard view of cars versus mass transit is necessary for cities to develop, is that cars are independent, free, market-based, mass transit is subsidized, and so on. But what I'm here to tell you is that cars have hidden subsidies. Mass transit has explicit subsidies. Has explicit subsidies, and two specific hidden subsidies that I'm interested in. So the cost of road construction and maintenance is not currently borne by drivers. Likewise, across the state, and in fact across the country, there are parking mandates which force people to maintain garages and so on, regardless of their modes of transportation that they use. So first, road construction and maintenance. The main user fee for roads is fuel taxes. There's also tolls. But and those are the ways in which the users of the roads pay for the roads. But sorry, I've got thrown around here. But in fact, our gas taxes are not high enough to cover the cost of the roads. So someone did a study that said you'd have to have $1 per gallon, which is 5 times the current New Hampshire gas tax, in order to recover the cost of the roads. And since the gas tax isn't high enough, instead that money comes out of the property taxes. A study in Texas found that some gas taxes would need to be $2 in order over some stretch of the highway in order to recover the cost for that road, and that no road pays for itself in its gas tax use. Another alternative I brought up is tolls. This is an example called hot lanes, where most of the lanes are free, but you have an express lane which you have to pay to get into, and this allows you can have tolling without having the toll person and slowing traffic, because all the tolling is electronic. Another example of paying for the cost of infrastructure is San Francisco is introducing a dynamic parking cost. So the parking cost changes based on the supply, such that higher costs during high demand times and lower costs during low demand times. This enables people to consider those costs when choosing how to drive. And this market pricing of controlling supply prevents congestion and enables the market to function smoothly, rather than having people sitting on the roads in traffic jams and so on. So the other example is parking mandates. I happen not to have a car, and hypothetically, let's say I come to New Hampshire and I want to decide to live here and not have a car and make my way without having to do this because of my perspective and all that. Well, in fact, and when I say without a car, I don't mean totally without a car, because there are new arrangements for car sharing, that, like for example Zipcar, where you can rent a car by the hour, and some 20 people can share one car and share those costs and enable them to live with lower transportation costs. So given that I'm relying on FlexCar or Zipcar, why would I have a garage? And the answer is because it's mandated. In New Hampshire and nearly everywhere, it's mandated like two parking spaces per house or apartment in Fremont, Here's Londonderry, 2 per dwelling unit, and so on. So regardless of whether you plan to have 1 car, 2 cars, or whatever, you have to have a 2-car garage. And this means, the way this affects things is that in comparing these 2 possibilities, on the one hand, the cost of car drive, and, like with the garage and gas and so on, versus comparing fares for subway or bus and the car share, now both lifestyles include the cost of the garage, which is actually substantial. It's $25,000, and this is a huge amount considering that house prices in New Hampshire range from $100,000 to $400,000. Like it can be up to a quarter of the cost of the home. And so now that's a sunk cost. That's not a cost I have to consider when deciding which path to choose. So there was a test in California along these lines where employers, rather than giving their employees parking, they gave them money equivalent to the cost of parking and gave them the option of buying parking. The number driving to work fell by 13% because people chose to use other ways once they've had to bear the cost because that money is more important to them than the driving. Maybe they don't like to drive anyway, but because it's free, they do it. And with every incremental choice of driving, you need more parking. When you need more parking, things have to be farther apart, and therefore more have to drive. It's less practical to walk and so on. So all of this forced parking situations build up and lead to more of the same. So I'm advocating that we repeal that we pay more attention to these parking mandates and try to repeal them on local levels or reduce them, so that even though most people will still maintain their garages and so on, it will give people the option, the market choice to do other things.
And 6 minutes.
What's that? Oh, all right. So one last thing, transit is subsidized, but it need not be. In Asia, they recover more than their operating costs for subways and so on. So don't assume that transit can't work unsubsidized. Anyway, that's that.
Yeah.
Next up, we have George Don.